Hello, and welcome to the HealthTech Marketing Show. I'm Adam Chirinas. I'm your host. I'm the CEO of Health Launchpad. Health Launchpad is one of the sponsors of this show. The other sponsor is the awesome HIMSS. And on Monday morning, I'm going to be getting on a plane to Orlando to my 9th global HIMSS conference, which I'm really looking forward to. So today's episode's about a topic we've never talked about, which is the notion of internal marketing. And I'm not even going to go into what that is. I've got the most fantastic guests to talk to us about that. Stacey Danheiser. And Stacey has her own company called Shape Marketing. And she's an incredibly experienced marketer and has a lot of really interesting insights to share. Now, before I bring Stacey to the stage, I just want to make a quick plug, and that's for a new thing that we're announcing today, and that is the HealthTech Marketing Network. So the HealthTech Marketing Network is a place for senior leaders in HealthTech marketing, so people who work at HealthTech marketing organizations and are in a director, VP, or CMO role. It's a place for people like that to connect with each other, learn from each other, and grow their careers. And actually, this is particularly relevant because today it's all about career growth. So with that, but without cut out my blather, let's bring Stacey to the stage. Stacey, hello.
Yes. Hi. Good to see you.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Oh my God. I've been looking forward to having you on the show for a while. So Stacey, tell us about yourself and your background and your amazing experience in marketing.
Yes. So I actually started my career in B2C marketing. So I worked for some very large, well-known companies. AT&T is where I started my career. And kind of jumping right in, we had, multi-million-dollar budgets in marketing. And I learned from some really great, amazing marketers, strategists. And of course, we worked with some of the top agencies in the US. And it was interesting because I worked in that industry for about 6 years before switching over to B2B. And I realized there were some practices that B2C marketers have and have ingrained that B2B marketers are lacking. And there was a lot of differences, and we could talk about the differences between B2C and B2B marketing. Yeah. But essentially, I brought some of that practice and that knowledge from my B2C career over to B2B. And I started working with hand in hand with the sales team and really built a relationship to get marketing and sales alignment and to figure out how to navigate, internal dynamics and complexity working for very large companies. I worked at 5 different Fortune 500 companies before finally deciding to leave to start my own consulting practice. And so now I work with B2B organizations really to bridge the gap between marketing and sales, to help with marketing strategy. And then one of my personal favorite topics of value propositions. And so that's what I do now. And I lead a training course for marketing professionals, really that are at the, manager, director, VP level, to have more influence with the C-suite and to build more credibility within their role.
And where, just so, in case I forget at the end, where can people find out about that?
Yes. So first of all, I'm active on LinkedIn. So love to connect with you on LinkedIn. And then my website is Shape, MKTG as in marketing.com, where I have information. The program is called Ascend B2B Leadership Accelerator. So it's all on my website.
Excellent. Great. I'll make sure to put the link in the show notes.
Awesome.
So, the topic of today is internal marketing. So this is something which I never really thought about much until I talked to you. And so what is that?
Yes. Well, it's something that you'll never see in a job description as to how to be a successful marketer, but it is really critical to your success. And that is that you have to really treat your internal stakeholders as almost like another customer set that you are marketing to. There's a lot of education that has to happen behind the scenes. Most CEOs and most salespeople and chief revenue officers and chief operating officers and the people that you're working with day in, day out are not marketers. They did not get trained in marketing. They do not really understand marketing. And so there's this educational piece of how do I educate my internal stakeholders, just like I educate my customers, by the way, on what the problem statements are. What does good look like? What are processes and things that they may be missing? And so it's really kind of internal marketing, I guess, to sum it up, is just really treating your internal stakeholders as another customer set that you have to market to.
Yeah.
And that you have to understand what their problems and pain points are and know how to position marketing as the answer, and the programs that you need and want, and the budgets that you need and want, and the resources that you need and want. How do you sell that internally? And so that becomes really, as you move up the ranks in your marketing career, that really becomes the job of a marketing leader. 90% of it is creating buy-in and collaborating and getting everybody on the same page and creating alignment.
I just wanted to sort of double click on something, and there's a lot in there, but one thing in particular, which is kind of behind the scenes here, which is that everybody thinks that marketing is easy. And everybody is an expert at marketing until they realize what an expert in marketing really looks like. Yeah, I think I have no data to back this up, but I would hesitate to guess to say that the companies that are most successful really understand the value of marketing.
Yes.
And value their marketing leadership.
Well, and that was the main difference I saw between B2C marketing and B2B. And I realized that, why would a company like AT&T, or look at anybody who's running ads in like the Super Bowl or the World Cup, or, spending money essentially to advertise, not knowing, by the way, what the return might be, right? Because it's not performance marketing. And the reality is the marketing team in the B2C company is the sales department.
Yep.
And so, but B2B, you have marketing plus the sales team equals a sale. And so I think it's confusing for CEOs and COOs. They understand the sales math. If I hire X salespeople and I give them a quota of Y, and even if they get 50% of it, I'm going to be able to meet my revenue number. And marketing kind of comes over and sits on top, and they don't understand, how marketing might make the seller's job easier. Because especially in complex sales, marketing cannot complete the sale without a seller.
Yeah.
And likewise, sellers can't complete the job without a marketer, right? If you have a website, if you have any social media, if you have a value proposition, if you have an ideal customer target, if you have all of that stuff, that is marketing. Marketing has done its job to enable and equip the seller. So I think that's a big difference. Yeah.
And that's, I think, that last thing that you said there, which is enabling and equipping the seller, so the buyer, right? Well, actually, you said seller, but it's also about enabling and equipping the buyer, because I think that something that a lot of CEOs may not realize really or fully appreciate is that B2B buyers spent 70% of their time of the buying process, average is 13 months. 70% of that time is spent without any contact with the organizations, any organizations they might be buying from. So that means that they are doing the homework, and that's what marketing helps do.
Yeah. And I would say some CEOs understand that, and others have to be educated on that. Yep. Right. So we know that this statistic is out there. It doesn't necessarily mean that every CEO believes it, by the way. And so what I found to be successful there is to show them, right? Show them how a purchase is done, or ask them to think about the last purchase they made on behalf of the business. And what are the steps that they went through, and did they consume any content? What were those things? And then that helps illuminate a little bit that, no, it's not easy. And look at all the things that you did, to make a decision. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So let's get back to internal marketing. So what does a chief marketing officer, VP of marketing, director of marketing need to do to be good at that?
Yeah. Well, there's a few things I think that need to be done before that. But if we could talk, there is a tactical output, which is I encourage everybody to build a tactical plan of how formal you make your communications internally. So it's not ad hoc. It's not, hey, when I think about it, I'll send an email and let everybody know what I'm doing. No, it really needs to be a formal plan, just like you do with your customers. We send an email newsletter every single week. Right? I get in front of the leadership team once a week. I send videos. There's a lot of things that you can do to make that a formalized process. And so, but before we get there, I would say there's really 3 ways that marketing leaders can start to build that foundation to build more credibility and influence. The first, which may be overlooked, is understanding kind of the dynamics of what your role is. And why I like to start there is that The word marketing means different things to different people.
Yep.
And I've learned this now. I've worked with 45, 50 different brands. I've interviewed hundreds of non-marketing leaders across COOs, chief revenue officers, CEOs, product leaders, sales leaders. And I found that when I ask this question, what do you think the job of the marketing team is? I will get different answers. Mm-hmm. And I like to start there because perception is reality. And so if your CEO believes and is using language like, well, marketing sets the strategic tone and the direction, and they help us uncover opportunities in the market, well, then you know that that's what the CEO expects. But sometimes, on the other hand, I hear, well, marketing helps us with executing events and sending out communications and staying in touch with our customers. And so you have these kind of like dynamics of is marketing viewed strategically or is marketing viewed tactically? So I'd love to start there, and I would encourage everybody to basically ask that question. You can even do it in an anonymous survey, right? Send it to your peers and stakeholders, like how well, what do you envision the job of marketing is on a scale of 1 to 10? How well is the marketing team executing against those dynamics? Just so that you can start to get some language, like how are they describing the role of a marketer?
Well, and when you're being interviewed, make sure when at the end of the interview, the interviews come to an end and say, what questions you have to me is that's the first question to ask is, what do you view as the role of marketing in your organization? Right?
Yes. Yeah. Especially for new jobs. Yes. 100%. If you're in an existing role, you can still, backtrack and do this. But it's very hard to change perceptions once they've been set. Right. So because I hear this from a lot of CEOs, I wish my marketing team was more strategic. I wish they would come to me with innovation and ideas and tell us what to go do instead of waiting to be told what to do. So, but to me, that means there's opportunity to connect those dots. Right. So that's the first thing. The second way to build credibility, and it's actually the best thing I would encourage every marketer, is to know your customers. And we hear about this all the time. Oh, know your customers. What does that actually mean? Well, the one thing that I realized transitioning from B2C to B2B, B2C marketers and marketing budgets always have customer research in it. In fact, we would never, ever go spend millions of dollars against an advertising or marketing campaign without first doing research on the front end to know what customers want and testing before the ad even went out and before the campaigns go out. And yet it's interesting, when I went over to B2B, most budgets do not have any budget for customer research. And so what that means is that you're relying on the sales team to give you insights about customers. But you have to remember, sellers are there to sell something. They think short term. They're trying to meet the quota. They're trying to get a deal sold today. Yep. They are not thinking long term. And they're certainly not thinking, oh, this is an interesting customer insight. I think we should go build a thought leadership summit around. They're definitely not thinking that way.
Yeah.
And so they're a great resource, by the way, salespeople, but it's not the only resource. Customer service is also a great resource, but not the only resource. So if you can budget for formal customer research where you can bring in a neutral third party, somebody that is an expert in interviewing customers and can get deeper insights, that is very money well spent. And if you marketers can budget for this and spearhead that project, then you look like the hero instead of wait. And this is I get called in to do customer research for different companies. And I will tell you 99% of the time, I do not get called in by the marketing team. I get called in by the COO, the CEO, the head of product, the head of sales. And I think that's interesting because I'm like, why is the marketing team so scared to budget for customer research or to include it in their budget when it's on everybody's mind, by the way? The entire C-suite's like, I wish we knew more about our customers. And yet marketing controls that budget. Yeah. So it's a very simple thing to get it added to your budget and to make it a formalized process and to make it part of your, religious practice, if you will, and annually, at least annually getting some research.
I know with many clients, they could literally cut one event, not the big one. They wouldn't need to cut hymns, like just one other event on the borderline about, and then fund an entire, probably have better customer insights than all of their competitors. I so agree with you. I do think it's very interesting that the point that you made here about the question is coming from the CEO, not from marketing. The request to do customer research, I think, is especially interesting. I think we found the similar thing. I've never really thought about it because we do a lot of customer research. We're doing interviews all the time. And it's something which I believe is so important that it's like, I will do it myself. I will have our account directors do it. We do not farm that out because it's just too important to get, it's too important to not do brilliantly. Yeah. So
and I think along that line, that's another, interviewing customers is a skill.
Yes.
And this is another thing, because I've seen, LinkedIn advice, like, just go interview your customers, just go talk to your customers. Well, I would actually hesitate on that. No, do not just go put anybody in front of your customers, right? You need to really, which is why I like the formal route of hiring somebody that's professional. Other option too is that you can learn that skill or have somebody on your team learn that skill, but know that it is a skill. And it really requires like a journalism mindset and curiosity and being able to dig a little bit deeper, like really what is the story behind the story? And you're not going to find that with surface level questions. If you really want insights, it's not about the first question. It's like question number 5 or 6 layers down. And that is a skill set. Journalists, by the way, there's a lot of content marketers who were journalists in their former background. They're trained. Journalists are trained really to think in that way and to kind of go deeper to dig for the story. So,
knowing how to ask a question which peels back the onion.
Yeah,
exactly. You said earlier on, it's sort of the difference between B2C and B2B in that regard. And it's sort of like, I think of, I spent a lot of my career at big agencies like Ogilvy. And have account planning and account research departments. And it's because that's an expertise that the B2C clients will pay for and expect and see it as a differentiator.
Absolutely. And B2B just has not learned that yet, right? It's like, I think a lot of value propositions in B2B, it doesn't matter what industry, it's we help you grow.
Yeah,
we help you grow. Okay, well, how do you help me grow? Or I love like the telecom, we help you transform your company. Really? Like buying a telecom service is really going to transform my entire life? I don't think so. So it's kind of, aspirational, but also it's empty. It's like an empty premise. And so I think there's a huge opportunity though for marketers to step up and to really own what that customer journey is, what the customer research is, what the customer insights are. And you can learn that. I mean, it takes some time, right? It's experience. You're not going to get that from one customer interview or doing customer research. You really do have to leverage the opportunities you have. Can you travel with your sales team? Can you sit in on customer service calls? If you're doing events, go to the events and listen in on these conversations and ask thoughtful questions of customers that are sitting right there. Not, what do you think about the event? Or how was that food? No, it would get a little bit deeper into their world. So that's number 2 is knowing your customer.
Okay, number one was
know your role. The role of marketing.
Yep.
Number 2 is know your customer. And then number 3 is know your business. And so this is, I just saw a Boathouse survey that came out. I think this one is definitely trending up, which is good. And this basically means, what do marketers know about how the company is run? Do we know what is the revenue target? What is the profit margin? Where is the revenue coming from? Which customer segments are the most profitable? Which products are the most profitable? Which geographies are the most profitable? Really digging into the business side and spending time. And, this is not, I would say sellers have this top of mind. What's our revenue target? Boom, they can recite it. This is what it is annually. This is what I need per month. This is what each territory, how it's broken down. You ask that to a marketer, what's the revenue goal? I don't know. I think it's like in my email somewhere. I'm sure my CEO sent us a report or something on it. So, and that's frustrating for CEOs because they want everybody to be thinking like, what are the goals? What are we trying to do? And so even if you have to write it down, print it out, put it on your laptop or on your monitor so that you are constantly just seeing it. This is our guiding principle. And one thing that I would encourage people to do here is make friends with your finance team. So somebody on finance to really help, in a safe space. Like, can you explain this to me? What are we measuring? What are the things that are important to the company? And by the way, finance people don't necessarily have all the answers. I've worked with many marketers where we've asked some really thoughtful questions and that the finance team hasn't previously thought of, and like, oh, that's really interesting. We haven't thought to measure that. Let's go dig in and let's go look at the data. We don't actually know the answer to, where the bulk of our revenue is coming from by customer segment or which ones are the most profitable. So that's one. And then also understanding what's happening with your competitors and understanding what's happening with your market and your industry. So this is like, you work in a specific industry, healthcare. What are all the regulations? What are all these things that are happening that are going to eventually impact your company, but your customers as well? Yeah. And so that you have kind of that big picture mindset. And same thing with the competitors. Like I see this a lot. There's a bad advice, maybe with like, don't pay attention to the competitors. Who cares what they're doing? Like, we're going to just blow them out of the water. But as a marketer, I've done a lot of research into the sea of sameness. And one thing we discovered is that marketers may unknowingly be copying and pasting exactly what their competitors are saying. And so if you're not proactive about this, like, what are they doing? What are they saying? Yes. What is their value proposition? What events are they going to? What are they writing about? What content are they producing? So you have to be kind of proactive about that, right? So that you are not just contributing to that sea of sameness, and that you really are purposeful about how can we be different? How can we say something different? And so ask your sales team, if you don't know, ask the sales team, who are the competitors that that are brought up in customer conversations? How do you currently respond to objections about our competitors? And get some insights from them, and then go do your own research. And, you can use ChatGPT and other, AI tools to help even like distill down, copy paste kind of their about us section from each of your competitors and figure out, okay, what are those big themes that they're trying to talk about? What is their main differentiator? How different are we? Do we actually sound exactly the same? And so you can kind of do a little competitive analysis to figure that out.
It's a great suggestion that. Yeah. In fact, actually a client asked me to do a competitive shopper for them, a recent trade show.
Okay.
And I found it was fascinating, just taking screenshots of what the message was they had on their booth. And if they had any collateral, which a lot of times these days people don't. The takeaways, what were the messages that came out of it? And I think, looking at half a dozen competitors that are all selling the same thing, it's like, there's no consistency between all of them. And so my client's challenge, and, we're helping them with this, is that, well, how do we position ourselves in a way that just kind of goes over the top of all of that?
Right. Exactly. So and that's something that's not typically top of mind for marketers, right? Yep. Doing a competitor analysis. Often we think competitor analysis happens at the product level, which it does, and it needs to, but it also needs to happen at the marketing and sales level. And
so know your role, know your customer, know your business. That's great. Are there other competencies? I mean, those are pretty good, right? Is there anything else?
Well, those are like the three sort of foundational things. If you want to build more credibility and influence as a leader, like that is really, those are the three areas. Now, there's a whole bunch of things that you can do, of course, for each of those, but figuring out where you have gaps is a big one, right? And then you can kind of determine, well, do we have skills gaps? Do we have resources gaps? Do we have knowledge gaps? That will help really you prioritize where to focus. And so I love, my passion, I guess, is helping to get marketers out of that order taking role. Like, I hate to see when the marketing team is just sitting around and waiting, and they have 400 things on their list of things to do that was given to them by somebody else, the sales team or the product team or the CEO or whoever, and they don't know how to get out of it. And this is really like a way to start thinking of like, how can I get out of this situation that I'm in? And if you cannot, basically the way you're going to get out is to elevate, right, your knowledge first, and then to learn how to connect the dots between these things. And so that's like really where the
three competencies, the one where I personally feel that a marketer needs to really focus on is number 2, which is know your customer. Because I think that if you can be seen as the expert in your organization of knowing the customer, you might outlast the average lifespan of a CMO, which is less than 2 years these days.
Well, and that's a really great point, because I've actually worked with clients. There's been a couple CMOs who've prioritized this that I've worked with. And that is what got them invited to the leadership table.
Yep.
Oh, make sure that you invite marketing, because they have all the insights. They know what's going on with the customer. They have their pulse on what's happening. That was what got them in the room. And kept them in the room. And to keep that, it's like, you've got to stay current and to keep doing that research. Otherwise you get booted out, and then they start relying on the sales team to provide all that insight.
And I do see this reflected back in a lot of the content that we create. Say we publish this podcast every week, we do blogs, we do webinars, blah, 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 all that sort of stuff, right? And we do a lot of it. The one thing that I think rises to the top, there's 2 topics. One is tactical, I think, and the other is sort of strategic. So the tactical one is, if we do anything about AI, everybody's really interested in it. I'm not sure how long that's going to last, frankly. But the one that always gets more interest is we talk about buyer journey, we share customer insights, we do an interview with a CIO, and it seems to provide the most value. So I do think there's an understanding. Okay, so we talked about the 3 competencies. You talked a little bit about tactical. What are the other things that, are sort of foundational, do you think, for any CMO or head of director of marketing, VP of marketing, what they can do to make themselves more valuable and advance their careers?
Yes. Well, okay. So now let's talk about turning all of this into an internal marketing plan, right? Yep. So we were kind of joking earlier that the philosophy of my results are going to speak for themselves is not one that marketers should adopt within their marketing leadership role, because you need to be vocal. You need to share what you're doing. You need to share progress. And so everything to me, when I advise marketing leaders on this, is to really build an internal marketing plan that starts with constantly reminding, here's what our goal is. Remember, we all agreed on this goal. And here's a progress update. So you can share progress updates on new content that's being released. You can share progress updates on events or other things that you have coming, once a week. Here's what's going on. Once a month, you can also then ideally get in front of the leadership team, right? And present more of a dashboard that shows, here's what our goals are. Here's the progress against those goals. Yep. And to present it in a way that is interesting to a CEO and that everybody kind of understands, right? Sometimes I see these dashboards and they go straight to here's how many website visitors we had. And here's how many email subscribers we have. And it's very confusing for a CEO who's looking at this thinking I literally can't connect the dots from people coming to our website to how is that going to get us revenue, right? Yep. And they just can't see it. So what I like to use in this is the customer journey. And so where you can use Gartner has a good one that maybe we can throw the link in, or I'll share the image with you, but it basically shows who owns the different parts of the cycle. And it's between marketing, sales, customer service. I think maybe product is in there. And so it kind of shows that marketing owns the front part, then sales owns kind of that seller piece, and the customer service kind of takes over. But marketing, by the way, is a thread throughout the whole entire life cycle.
Yes.
And so I like to use that as a visual to say, here's the customer life cycle, here's what we're doing for awareness, and here's some of the stuff we're measuring. Website visitors, social media visitors, email subscribers, whatever. Demand, here's what we're doing for demand, and here's some of the things that we're measuring here. And then you get to sales. Okay, here's what's happening. We're measuring sales conversations. We're measuring close rates. We're measuring win rates, right? We're sales cycle time, that kind of stuff. Then you go to the post-sale activity.
Yep.
And depending on the type of company you are, you can measure onboarding activity. How quickly does a customer get onboarded? How many steps are they actually taking through the onboarding? Are they actually getting value? Because what happens is the front part of the cycle, we're promising value. It's just a promise. The customer never receives any value until they start implementing and using the thing that you just sold them. Mm-hmm. So your job is to figure out, how quickly can I get them to use the thing that we just sold them? Now, often marketing is uninvolved at all in this onboarding process. And that's a mistake because the operations team are not trained communicators. And so when the operations team is left to do onboarding, it's typically very operational.
Yeah.
It's very direct. It's not very customer friendly, let's say. And so marketing really needs to help with that. And you could start measuring how quickly were we able to get people onboarded. We got them 90% through the way. If we could keep them as a customer for 6 months, we know that they're going to stay for a year or 2 months or whatever.
That's especially important, I think, in the areas that we deal with, because, you know, I face this with my own software company, and I see it with a company, with several of our clients. It's like the key thing, and actually one of the key questions that buyers ask is, how are you going to help us get adoption? So it's great. So we'll sign a license fee for X $million or X hundred thousands of dollars. How are you going to make sure that we get these 1,000 physicians and these 5,000 nurses using the application? And marketing is key to that.
Yes. And then you have, of course, cross-sell and upsell.
Yeah.
And so this is one, I think it's starting to come back around as important to marketers. For a while, everything was like, we need awareness, we need demand, we need leads. And then we went through COVID, and then it was like, wait a minute, preserve the base. Yep. Everybody needs to keep the customers. Then it went back to leads. And now I think it's somewhere in the middle.
Well, part of that is also the shift in the VC market, right? In the last 3 or 4 years, interest rates have gone up. You know, money's not cheap anymore. Suddenly it's much harder to raise capital. And so it's gone from growth at all costs to profit at all costs.
Yes.
And the best source of profit is going to be growth from existing customers.
Exactly. Yeah. So that, again, is a huge opportunity for marketers, right? To plug in and really understand retention, upsell, you know, loyalty. How do we get referrals? How do we make customers into advocates? So I like to, when I look at a marketing team structure, I like to compare it to a customer life cycle, because I'm like, who's doing what? And often I see like 99% of the marketing team is structured for awareness and demand. Nobody's doing anything else for the whole rest part of the cycle, which means money on the table. So this is like that opportunistic thing that we're talking about with CEOs. Hey, we've done some analysis. We're realizing we're leaving a ton of money on the table, and we're going to start doing campaigns and point efforts toward these different parts of the customer life cycle.
Well, this has been so interesting. And I think, again, people can learn more about the practice that you're developing at Shape Marketing. So that's shapemkt.com.
MKTG, yes.
MKTG.com. Follow you, connect you on LinkedIn. I mean, you've got over 11,000 followers. So, and it's not surprising you produce really good content. I always learn something from you. So it's great. Any parting thoughts here?
I mean, I guess the final thing is just, you know, take ownership and take control of doing this. This is stuff people will not tell you. Nobody's going to come and say, hey, I think you should put together an internal marketing plan. I think you should learn more about our business. I think you should learn more about our customers. No, they're going to expect that you're doing this stuff. And if you really want to get to that next level and kind of catapult your influence and credibility, you know, you will make time to learn and you're, you know, anybody listening already to this is doing that, right? They're making time to learn, but that is the number one barrier that I hear people. I don't have time. I have so much stuff to do. And the reality is you're going to continue to be stuck in that world until you make time to get out of it.
Great. Excellent. Stacey, thank you. So very insightful. And I look forward to following you on LinkedIn and continuing to learn more. So I'm going to wrap things up.
Okay.
And thank you all for listening. If you're listening, you can watch us. And we have a YouTube video of this. I'll put the link in the show notes. And equally, if you're watching the video or you're looking at one of our blogs or LinkedIn, you can subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever your favorite podcast application is. It's just the HealthTech Marketing Show. It's easy to find. And again, if you are a health tech marketing leader and you're interested in connecting with your peers, check out the HealthTech Marketing Network. You can find it on my website, which is healthlaunchpad.com. We have, I think, about 50 members now. And we have monthly meetings, and everybody just loves it. Everybody learns something and are really helping each other with their careers. So look forward to sharing more stuff like today's episode with you. We have more shows coming up. We're doing this once a week, so do subscribe. Thank you very much for listening.